We're good to go.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Sustainable Change Alliance conversation called Innovative Solutions to Homelessness, an update on the Dignity Moves project. My name is Matt Riley. I am a Sustainable Change Alliance Foundation board member and the CEO of Infinity Renewables. And full disclosure, I am also a happy member of the Dignity Moves team. I am delighted to do this follow-up conversation. For those of you that joined us previously, I think a little less than a year ago, we had a basic overview of what the Dignity Moves effort was all about, the homelessness crisis, and what the Dignity Moves group was doing to try to address it. I am very excited to have this conversation because it's one of those great opportunities, which I hope we replicate many, many times over for Sustainable Change Alliance, where we can actually follow up with a broad conversation, with a very specific, tangible result. And today we get to talk about that result. So it's a pretty great transition for us as an organization to see how that works. But before we do, I want to do a couple of things. A brief description of the Sustainable Change Alliance. It is an impact-oriented, member-based, not-for-profit educational group. We're focused on impact investing, which we define as bringing financial and other resources to double and triple bottom line organizations that are trying to address big social, environmental, or health-related issues, and trying to do that in a sustainable manner. Some of those organizations are for profit, some are nonprofit, and some come from the independent sector. I'd like to acknowledge the hardworking and dedicated SCA board members, especially those on this call, and express my gratitude for all of our members. And finally, we couldn't do any of this without our sponsors, who are the founding sponsors are Argyle Capital Partners, Impact Family Office, Maps.com, Solgenics, the Tobes Group, and UBS. Our platinum sponsors include Nixon Peabody Law Firm and Cottage Hospital, and our silver sponsor is Bashir's Insurance. If you're not yet a member of the Sustainable Change Alliance Foundation, we encourage you or your organization to join us on this journey. Visit sustainablechangealliance.org, where you can sign up as a member. And I give myself to this. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to talk with you. So let's talk about some logistics. This meeting is being recorded. Everyone is on mute except for our guest speakers and myself. And the chat room is how we will be taking questions. And I know how we all love to use the chat function on Zoom. So I expect lots of questions from people. The two speakers we have today, I am delighted to introduce, and in Elizabeth's case, reintroduce into the SCA conversation. Elizabeth Klepp-Funk is the founder, CEO of Dignity Capital and the chairman and founder of Dignity Moves. Aaron Edelheit is the CEO of Mindset Capital and a member of the Dignity Moves team. Elizabeth, let's start with you. Aaron, I'm gonna go to you right after the same question. Give us a little bit of your personal story and really the why around your engagement with this issue of homelessness.
Sure, Matt, thank you. I've been an impact investor for most of my career, and I do a lot of work in developing countries and really focused on poverty. I really, am very touched by particularly the young mothers that in developing countries that are struggling to feed their children, and I really found a sort of a life calling to help in things that alleviate poverty in one way or another. And a lot of my work is in low-income housing. And it's been really, it's just difficult for me to get my head around why in developing countries we really don't have homelessness. Why do we have that here? And really how unacceptable it is. And so started putting my head around thinking about, maybe some out-of-the-box thinking is going to be appropriate, and maybe rethinking some of the fundamental systems and paradigms that we've just been operating under as assumptions, and to challenge those. So that's been what's been exciting for me, and doing it together with teammates who are all peers, who are all equally passionate, has really been inspiring.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Aaron, you want to share?
Yeah, no, I was, my past
big company before Mindset Capital is I was buying foreclosed homes, fixing them up and renting them out during the foreclosure crisis, and built up a company of 2,500 single family rentals in Atlanta, Charlotte, Orlando, and Tampa. And even there, where it's more affordable, I was shocked at how people were struggling to pay the rent. And so after I sold the company, I joined Social Venture Partners here in Santa Barbara with Glenn Batchelor. And I've been working for like 5 or 6 years to try to figure out a way of how I could help people who either can't get into a home, who are homeless, who are problems around affordability. And why is it so expensive? Why is it so hard to build anything? I feel very, very lucky that I live in Santa Barbara. I think this is heaven on earth. And so I've been trying for the last 5 or 6 years to figure out a way, because it can't really be heaven on earth if you have people living under the overpass and people are struggling to live here. And so I feel very, very grateful that someone knew about my passion and introduced me to Elizabeth and Matt. And I kind of raised my hand and I said, hey, how can I help? And it's been amazing to be a part of the Dignity Moves team.
Thanks, Aaron. Stephen, we have a presentation, just a few slides for folks to see some images of the first project we're doing. So I think Elizabeth has that. So Elizabeth, could you please just reframe? I know a little bit of this information is going to be repetitive, just the first 2 minutes, I'm sure, just repetitive from what we talked about before, but just reframe what it is that Dignity Moves is doing, why we're doing this particular part of the very complex and broad landscape of addressing the homelessness crisis, and then talk a little bit about the first project.
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks, Matt. So as you've kind of heard us hinting at, Dignity Moves started not as a nonprofit, but as a task force, really, of business leaders across California who came together and said, what could we do to apply our business skills to this problem? And we first started with just studying it and trying to learn as much as we could. And what we found is, well, first of all, that the epidemic is horrible, and we all know that it's big. It's also going to get a lot bigger. And, there are lots of estimates out there, but what we do know is it's going to be worse. And a lot of those are going to be first-time homeless who are new on the streets. And so that was really, I think, heavy for all of us, because, there are some folks that we think, you get in your mind that they're just used to living on the streets. They want to live on the streets, which doesn't turn out to be true. But, there's going to be all this wave of new first-time homeless. And we started looking at the situation, and we realized that there are a lot of smart people focusing on building permanent housing. And ultimately, the solution to permanent to the crisis is going to be building enough affordable housing so that our housing crisis can be back in balance. But really, in California, we spend literally all of our money on permanent housing. Even the homeless budgets have been so laser focused on permanent housing. And the problem is that in our communities, permanent housing costs $700,000 per door. And so the net result is, despite big amounts of money going in, 72% of our homeless remain unsheltered. And there's not been enough attention spent on what can we do for that 72% and why. And it turns out that there is quite a big why to this, which is that we've found that if you get people off of the streets and get them out of survival mode, I learned in science class in high school that, when you're in survival mode, fight or flight, your brain doesn't work right. You can't, your executive functions aren't there. You can't logic your way to a stable future when you're in survival mode. And so if you can get people in to a safe, stable place where they can stay for a few months, there are lots of potential exits out of homelessness at that point. Maybe you can help them reunite with family. Maybe you can help them move to a less expensive place. Maybe you get them a voucher. There are lots of potential solutions, but that interim step is so important. And we also find that people who go straight from the streets into their own apartment sometimes don't do well, that adjustment stage is really important. And thankfully, we can do that really inexpensively. And that was really where Dignity Moves kind of had the aha moment, was like, wait, our cities are thinking about this wrong. They're not thinking about the importance of investing in interim housing. And we can do this really inexpensively thanks to modern technology and developments in building materials. So what we ended up doing is designing a model where everybody gets their own room. I think it's fundamental. People need the privacy and dignity. They don't want to go to big group shelters. And in fact, this survey that you see down in the corner was done in Goleta recently, going to people who are living in encampments and saying, why? They're vacant shelter beds. Why would you not take a shelter bed? They don't want to go to a group shelter. They want their own space. They also want to know that when they walk out of the room, their stuff won't get stolen. They don't want to be in bunk beds. They want to bring in their pet, which is pretty fundamental for these folks. This is maybe some of the only companionship that they have. All of those things change when you've got your own room. And so what we've done is designed a modular solution where it's actually not modular, it's prefabricated. They come as flat pack units that can be assembled on site in just a couple of days. And they're small, they're sufficient, they're as big as my son's college dorm room. And it's enough space for people to have their own dignity in a bed, individual heating and cooling, most importantly, a door that locks. So let me tell you a little bit about the project that we're doing in Santa Barbara. This is where it is. It is what a lot of folks think of as the Garden Street lot, because you normally would enter from Garden Street, drive through that parking lot, and you exit onto Santa Barbara Street. But for this project, the entrance will actually be there on Santa Barbara Street. And it's a flag lot that is owned by the county. This whole area is planned to be developed in the future. The larger one is going to be a county building going in, starting pretty much right away next year. The flag lot will be developed in a few years. It's ultimately going to be permanent housing. But that's exactly what Dignity Moves wants to do, is we want to slide in on sites where a developer's got a project that's planned in the future, but it's going through the entitlements process, which, as we know, can take 4 or 5 years. And the good news is that for once, this long entitlements process is actually our friend, because when that land is vacant for a few years, Dignity Moves can basically, hire and better use of that land, put units on there that are short-term, that are temporary, they're portable. You can use them with a forklift and put them on a truck and take them to the next location. They can be used over and over again. The units that we've selected and invested in have a life expectancy of over 20 years. So we envision, I could ultimately see kind of a hopscotch pattern across Santa Barbara County, where we could have sites that were coming and going at all different times, and we could move these units around as necessary. The other nice thing about this prefabricated building materials is it's fast. We can use, the California state has issued emergency building codes that allow us to do emergency shelters very, very, very quickly and not go through the long, huge entitlements process of traditional buildings. And it's also really fast to assemble. As I mentioned, it takes 2 people 2 to 3 days to build one of these buildings that has two bedrooms in it. So, and the nice thing is also it can be done with volunteers, or largely with volunteers. Of course, we will, have a general contractor making sure that the electrical and everything else is done right. And then in addition, we've got a company, a Santa Barbara company, also one of our team members, Bevy House, that's designed a custom-made shipping container that will have individual rooms that have a toilet and a shower. And it will also have a laundry facility in that shipping container. And so again, it's portable, where when this project is done, we can unplug it from the utilities and take that shipping container to the next site. It's really novel and really cool, and we're super excited about this. So the site in downtown Santa Barbara is going to be about 34 private rooms, 33 I think we're at right now, as well as a dining facility, gathering spaces, and the restroom and shower building that we discussed. One of the things that I find really amazing is how many companies and providers have risen up and raised their hand and said, we want to be a part of this solution. We really see this as a potential really powerful tool in our toolkit against homelessness. So Gensler, one of the largest architectural firms in the world, is doing our work for us pro bono. We're getting, general contractors giving us their advice and their help pro bono. Really been touching to see so many folks raising their hands and saying, I'll help out however I can. The thing that's incredible is that obviously with some of that pro bono work, but also the inexpensive building materials, we're able to do these for under $30,000 a door, which is really a game changer. And I think that it's obviously a fraction of the cost of traditional affordable housing. But that's, now we're starting to talk about easing, the potential to ease the pressure on our housing crisis when we can have some forms of housing that can be done that are still to California's safety and fire and building codes, but to do it for really a fraction of the cost. Here's a quick peek into what the site's going to look like. Lots of community spaces, art, gardens, all the kinds of things that makes it feel like it's really a true community. It's going to be designed to fit with the aesthetic of Santa Barbara. We're even doing terracotta style roofs. And the gate will be something that will be lovely when people are walking by. We'll all be completely fenced in. And really designed to feel like a welcoming community rather than just, rows of boxes. So this is my last slide. I'm going to turn it off and open it up for Aaron and for discussion. But I do, it's not right to finish this without at least doing a little bit of a financial plea, which is that we do need donor support. The county has been an amazing partner. And I want to say you guys should be proud because Santa Barbara County is really an exception when I have seen so many cities and counties still refusing to focus on this 72% of the people who are unsheltered and really giving it an afterthought. Santa Barbara has really embraced this idea of interim housing or bridge housing, as I guess you're calling it. And the county is committed to doing this as a first project, but hopefully we'll be doing many more. And the county is contributing the land to the project for free. Obviously, for now, it's not permanently. They're also covering 100% of the services costs for Good Samaritan, who is going to be the services agency, wonderful services agency that is going to be doing the services and providing the operating and the meals and so forth. The county is covering all of that. And the county is splitting the construction costs with us 50-50. So the county is contributing about $600,000 of the $1.2 million estimated budget. And so we need to raise another $600,000. And we estimate that this $600,000, we could literally transition in just these 3 years, hundreds of people into permanent housing. If you estimate 60 to 70% of the people who go through programs like this end up in permanent stable housing of one sort or another. So that's this current project. And we'll be talking later, but we are, as you've heard me mention already, starting to think about future projects in Santa Barbara County. And we will, of course, need ongoing philanthropic support to co-invest in that, along with the county and possibly the state, which we'll talk about a bit as well with Project Homekey, to continue to provide these great transitional supportive housing sites across the region. So with that, I'm going to turn off the slides, open it back up for faces.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. And Aaron, before we get into some questions I have for you, Elizabeth, there was a few questions that came through on the chat, which actually I think will be well answered here. Who manufactures the units that we are going to be putting on this site?
So the company is a company called Harwall, which is based out of Los Angeles. They're a big multinational building materials company. And they make a bunch of building materials for Home Depot. They do, backyard ADA units and so forth. And so we had them custom designed to the specifications that we needed in order to meet the California emergency building codes. So they've custom designed what they're calling a cube. And they've actually created their own, created a division of their company now called Boss Cubes that is selling these, and not just to us, but to any other city or county that wants to employ them for this purpose. So the sub company, the subsidiary is called Boss Cubes, but it's a division of Harwall in Los Angeles. And then
Elizabeth, power, water, and sewer. How are those going to be addressed? I can answer the question if you want, but you go for it.
You go for it, Matt.
This is my part of the scope. What we're pursuing there is power coming from the utility water coming from water district and sewer, and actually building a dedicated sewer hookup. So we're trying to steer clear of being fully temporary, where you'd have to have like a Marburg truck coming in every couple of days. We're trying to have a dedicated hookup so we can avoid that. What we do have at the site is all of the units have power and air conditioning, but water and sewer really only need to go to the one building which houses the bathrooms and adjacent dining areas. So it's kind of rather consolidated and well designed to be as efficient as possible.
And on that, the other thing to mention about this shower, bathroom, laundry building that we've had designed is that it can be done with tanks. So in a future site, if there is a site that doesn't have utilities available, that doesn't have to be a constraint for us. We can do it either way.
And then the last question before we get to Aaron is, can you talk a little bit more about the services on the site? Who's the primary services organization? What types of service? What do they really do on the site? Is there site security, that sort of thing?
Great question. So Good Samaritan has been in operation for 27 years, is really, and I've worked with a lot of services agencies across California. They are really excellent. They really know their stuff. They're going to be the services provider who will also be doing the on-site management. They'll be providing meals. They're doing 24/7 staffing. So there will always be someone on site. And they do a great job of working with folks where they're at. They help, they do, it's called case management, sitting down with each person and figuring out what are your needs. If you need to get into some sort of treatment program or mental health care, they get you connected with that. In fact, for the treatment programs, they've got their own programs. But then things like, you can't get an apartment if you don't have a driver's license. Well, if you don't have a driver's license, then let's take you to the DMV. And they've got transportation to do that. They really work intensively one-on-one with folks to try to help smooth the transition towards an exit from homelessness.
And I think the answer to this on-site security question, the 24-hour security at this location, I think that probably be in some way at every location that we would do. Now, site security, if we're co-locating this with like a homeless shelter in a different location, there might be security there for the whole property. But yeah, it's very important that there is 24-hour site security and an on-site management at the project location. Okay. Aaron, I want to give you a chance to chime in here. I know you're kind of pacing back and forth, so I know you always stand when you do your meetings. Let's talk a little bit about, what has the community response been like to this project? We've had a lot of conversations with, oh my gosh, countless numbers of community organizations. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So the community, one of the things I feel lucky, not only because this is a beautiful place to live, but I love how generous this community is. And, we've had a number of conversations across the board, either with private donors, a couple of foundations, and with service providers. We have been, talked with SB Act, if you're familiar, CityNet, downtown Santa Barbara. We've talked to county supervisors, city council, et cetera. And there's been, I think we've gotten lucky in a way, because it feels like the time is now, but almost universal support with what we're trying to do. And it's really been great. And, when you talk to an organization like SB Act that does the outreach, that goes and tries to help people who are on the streets, they tell us, we have people that are ready. We have people that are ready that we can work with to get them out of being homeless, but there's no roots. There's nowhere to put them. There's nowhere to treat their mental health, or if they have addiction issues, or just to get them to a stable place so that they can transition to a more permanent supportive housing. And that's been really great. At the same time, all of these conversations, kind of hundreds of conversations that Matt and I have had, and that I've had by myself, it shows that people really want to believe in something, that you can actually say, we're going to build something. And all of us know from trying to do either a renovation project or build anything in Southern California or Santa Barbara, how impossible it feels. All the hoops, all the hurdles you have to go through. And what's really, really exciting about this project is that because it's being permitted by the county, there isn't city review, even though we've been talking to the city and communicating and sharing what we're doing. Because it qualifies under emergency shelter and these can be moved, then you literally, all you have is fire and safety. So what I'm most excited about is showing what I believe this very, very generous community to kind of break through the cynicism that is kind of naturally here around anything construction related, because there's been some high profile projects that have been, that have ran into trouble, and to show that we as a community can build and we can do it quickly. We can do it in 4 or 5 months as opposed to 5 years if you're lucky, if you go through the process. And I think that's been one of the feedback that I've gotten the most, even people supporting the project, is to say, I'm supporting it, but I'm still a little skeptical that this is going to happen. And I'm here to say that it is going to happen, and that when it happens, I am going to be giving countless tours, because it's going to be so self-evident and it's going to be so professionally run that the media and politicians and funders and community members are all going to ask, why aren't we doing this everywhere? Not just in Santa Barbara, but that Santa Barbara can be a light to all of California. And so I think that's really exciting. And the other really cool thing just on fundraising, doing kind of a public-private kind of model where the county is chipping in and then you're raising philanthropic dollars as well, this is a point Matt has made, which is really beautiful, is that you can make this project better. We can beautify it. We can make it more attractive, because we can say we're using philanthropic dollars for that, and you're not using tax revenue, where people are like, why are you making this so nice? The last thing, and just in terms of community engagement, I'm very excited, is I'm Jewish and I'm a member of Congregation B'nai B'rith, and the temple and the rabbis that are really kind of rallying around this project and are planning to engage the entire, Jewish community to bring in team groups, to bring in other groups to help either with free labor or to beautify, put up murals, a garden bed, et cetera. And I think this is kind of the first step of engaging the faith communities on how they can get involved and really make this like a community thing that we embrace. And I believe that will reflect in when the people experiencing homelessness come in, they will feel that this is something dignified, where the community cares and is invested, and that will be one of the most exciting things to see how that feels and how it works. I don't know if there's anything else, Matt, that you want me to address as part of just the community engagement, but.
No, I think that's great, and I think that the faith-based. There was a question in the Q&A about the local faith community. I think you addressed that. There's lots of opportunities for any faith-based organization to engage, I think. And I think we've had a number of organizations reach out to us, and what we're trying to put together is are these it could be volunteer opportunities, it could be sponsoring units, it could be putting furniture together, it could be, there's lots of different ways that we could do this. I would like to spend a couple of minutes, Aaron, if you wouldn't mind. I mean, can you talk a little bit about the fundraising, just the core fundraising element. You've been in charge of that for the team, or along with Jack Lorenz, who's one of the two Dignity Moves employees. He's not on this call today, but you and Jack have been spearheading that. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's been the response, both from individuals and some of the other organizations in town?
Yeah, so the response has been good. We've raised, I believe, over $250,000, mainly from private individuals. We're getting the final exact. I don't know what the exact figure is. We just held kind of like a salon style fundraiser at someone's house, and so I don't have the exact figure, but I know that we should have north of 250,000 that we've raised. We also are waiting. We're far down the road with two foundations for significant six-figure donations that they've given us every indication that that things are looking great. And with one of them, we should literally hear in the next 2 weeks, and the other in the next couple of weeks. And you know, I think that people, I feel blessed again as to live in a community that is very generous, but still, you know, going back to what I said before, I think I know there's a lot more capacity in this town, and I know people are supporting it, but there still is, and rightfully so, kind of a skepticism. Will this actually get, you know, can you actually do something? And so this is why this project is so important, is to kind of break through that, and to show, and also to show that the government and kind of philanthropy can really supercharge the development of a project and projects. And so I think everything's going really well. I think we're planning another kind of salon style fundraiser as well, either in October or November. I'm meeting with someone else on that, but you know, things are going well.
Great. I think that brings up something that, you know, Elizabeth, maybe you could talk about, but the question of will it get done, and then will it have the impact we hope it will. I think we often point to some recent data. The Good Samaritan ran a project in Isla Vista with 20 individual little pallet shelters. So kind of similar to what we're doing, but a little bit more temporary. And they ran it for 6 months right next to People's Park. It was a really challenging place to do it. And in 6 months, with 20 of these units, they transitioned 27 people to what we consider like a very successful outcome, either permanent supportive housing or enhanced substance abuse treatment. So Elizabeth, maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, you're up in the Bay Area. You're very tight with Life Moves, which is a services organization. What do they see as kind of the, you know, how do folks that are experiencing homelessness, you know, how does this look for them? You know, how do they get referred into this? Who does the referral? You know, what happens when they arrive at the location? What is their experience like when they enter this facility and start engaging with the service organization and all of the other parties that kind of come in from public health, et cetera?
Yeah, great question. So people will be referred into this in a modified version of the local coordinated entry system. So you're probably familiar that there's, you know, a system where people register when they're homeless, and they get assessed for the acuity of their needs and whether they're family with children and all these things. And there's sort of a wait list and a priority list. And traditionally across California, the way those work is that then when a shelter bed becomes available, the next eligible person anywhere in the county gets assigned to that bed. And so what that would mean is that people would be coming down from the North County, you know, if they were next on the list. And what the county of Santa Barbara has agreed to do is to modify that so that the folks that are right in the immediate vicinity will be prioritized, who are right in downtown Santa Barbara, either last known address or where they've been sleeping and staying. And so I find that really important, because as we start to talk about future projects, it's going to be really important for local communities, hyper-local communities, to have seen the impact on their immediate neighborhood when they, allow that one of these sites to be built in their community. So that's really exciting. So, but it's going to be through this coordinated wait list. It is not going to be walk-ins. People can't go stand in line and walk up. There won't be any walk-up services, even daytime services provided if you don't live on the site. That's really important for the neighborhood's security and again, the neighborhood's acceptance. So you would enter through the traditional waiting list process, and the in terms of we already sort of talked a little bit about the type of work that Good Samaritan will do with these people, with the folks, kind of meeting them where they're at. One of the things that I love is that if somebody comes in and they mutually agree with Good Samaritan that they could really use a detox program or a substance abuse program, Good Samaritan will literally hold their spot for them so that they can go do that and know that they've got a safe place to come back to. Good Samaritan keeps lots of rules. There are curfews. There are no guests that aren't authorized. There are quiet hours. People don't just wander on and off the site. If you've got an appointment or someplace to go to, Good Samaritan takes you there. They really run a tight ship and make sure that there's discipline, both for the sake of the neighbors as well as, quite frankly, the sake of the residents themselves. We find that this works phenomenally well. What you mentioned is Life Moves. We did our first project together with an organization called Life Moves up in Silicon Valley, and Life Moves finds that because they also do safe sleeping or safe parking sites that they operate, and they find that the success rates of people who have been staying in a car, albeit on a safe site, versus people who are in a unit that they've got a door that locks and the dignity of that, it's nearly twice the success rate. Success rate being defined as people finding their way into permanent housing. So it's really an investment worth making, and it's one reason why Life Moves is now investing very heavily in this up here in Silicon Valley.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, that's and I think also just kind of back to the location and the proximity to downtown. I think the location was selected because it was so close to the courthouse and so close to some of the things that folks might need to get back on their feet, stabilized, document ready, and be prepared to go into the next phase, whether that be permanent supportive housing or rekindling relationships with family, that sort of thing. But it's only a block away from the courthouse, library, museum, State Street, and I think we've had tremendous positivity coming from the business community in all those areas too, saying, "Hey, look, we really support this project." Okay, so I want to, Aaron, we got a really good question here from Chuck, and about the relationship of this project and I guess some of this we might be going into more of Aaron's opinion of the world here, which is great. I think that's why people tune into these things, about just the housing crisis in general. This model of being temporary is what we're pursuing, but how could this model be used as permanent affordable housing in the future? And funding around that, and how do we kind of fit in and as Chuck put it, on a rung on the housing ladder. So Aaron, I'd like to get your thoughts on that, because I know you've been deep into housing for a long time.
Yeah, no, the problem, for good or for bad, California leads the country in many, many trends. And housing is one of them, unfortunately, the wrong way, in that California, I think it's either ranks 49th or 50th in the housing units that it's building per capita. They estimate in a place like LA, we've underbuilt 1 million homes over the last 30 years. So if you think about just dramatic underinvestment in housing, the homeless that you see are kind of the tip of the iceberg of a much larger problem, that housing is getting increasingly out of reach for people, or at a minimum, their percentage of their income, it's growing and growing, where their one life event, one health event, job loss away from effectively getting kicked out of their home. And there's no vacancy anywhere. And so you see any kind of change, slight change in demand, you see prices go crazy, and you're either on what I call the housing train or you're not. And I believe, my personal belief is that it is one of the principal drivers of inequality. And that if you're worried about inequality in our country, if you're worried about inequality in our state or city, you have to address the cost of housing. And the only way to do that is increase supply. But how do you do that when there's so many rules, regulations, and problems, and not in my backyard mentality, where there are hurdles where you can't build anything? And I think what makes this project so interesting long term of where you could take it is, well, California is recognizing these problems and starting to pass rules and laws and stuff that can help circumvent or prioritize certain kind of housing to get to the front of the line. And we're taking advantage of this with this project. And what I like about the idea of the public-private partnership is we live in Santa Barbara, there's mountains and oceans right next to each other, there's height restrictions, 1/3 of the county is state or reserve or national park. And so land is at a premium. But you ask yourself, how much land is owned by the city, county, or state that is empty or underutilized? And then all of a sudden, then it becomes really interesting. And if you're able to remove land from the cost equation or figure out ways to use it, either short-term or long-term, or start showing the people in government that there's a better use, or that, hey, you have this giant parking lot, what if we just took part of it and used it for a better purpose for our community? You start thinking about different models that you could use. Right now, this is the state, the county's giving some money and we're raising philanthropic. Why couldn't there be, once you've shown this can work, why can't you use it for impact investing models? Why couldn't there subsidies in Section 8 rents? There's a need across the board from super affordable kind of workforce, to create a more sustainable kind of regenerative community. We need housing for everybody. And to me, what's so exciting about this is the first step to start trying to figure out, innovative solutions so that we can start exploring these models. And that's what excites me. But the end result is we need to build. We need to build housing for our community.
Go ahead, Elizabeth. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna jump in and augment that a little bit, which is that where Dignity Moves got its start was this project that we did in Mountain View, which is actually a permanent site. So we funded that with Project Homekey funding, which was the state's project, which was designed to buy hotels, but nothing in it said it had to be hotels. You just had to be able to spend the money in a few months. And normal construction, you can't do that. So we applied for that and got that funding, and that project will be permanent. We bought the land, we did underground utilities, we did not use the emergency building codes, we did foundations and full proper buildings, albeit modular, and we could do that in just a few months. And those, while the buildings are permanent, the model for Life Moves is that folks move through them on a temporary basis every 90 to 180 days. But as we start thinking about Homekey 2.0, which has just been announced last week, which is a huge amount of money, there are conversations happening here in Santa Barbara as well, which is that we could buy land or land that the county owns, and we could build permanent infrastructure. It doesn't have, it would be an upgraded product from what we're doing with these temporary models, but do something that's really permanent, and they can have bathrooms and little kitchenettes in them. And so why couldn't somebody pay rent and be there indefinitely? And I think that with Homekey, we will be having those conversations and considering using this modular construction for really, really inexpensive micro units that could be funded by the state and potentially be places where people would stay indefinitely.
So I think the answer to your question, Chuck, is absolutely no. We have not abandoned the idea of more permanent solutions. In fact, we are constantly thinking of new ones, but we do want to focus in on something that can be achieved in the short term as well. And I think that's where we're talking about this more temporary project because of the utilization of land for a shorter period of time, 3 to 5 years, and as Elizabeth talked about early on. So we want to have the big ideas, but we also want to get something done. And the whole point of this discussion is to really talk to folks about, we talked about the big idea months ago. We are getting something done now. The question is, when we revisit this conversation in a little while, what more is this community doing? Maybe on the permanent supportive housing front.
And if I just added to that, Matt, one more thing is that if you think about how long it takes to get a building or to get construction happen, even if you get through all of it, it takes a while. And so what's really interesting about this idea is if we as a community, and I know the county's working on building permanent supportive, but if we decide as a community, hey, we need to build a lot more units and across the board, well, there's still an opportunity for this model to work while we're waiting for those housing, while we're waiting for that housing to actually happen. And it doesn't just have to be the housing for those experiencing homelessness. It could be for teachers or nurses, or it could be for, Section 8 housing while we're waiting for that construction to happen.
Yeah, and this model, even these temporary units, right? There's no reason that people couldn't pay rent and stay in these long term. They've got a 20-year life expectancy, right? So even this inexpensive model, they're not going to meet the requirements for HUD vouchers, which require that you have your own kitchen, your own bathroom, but that doesn't mean it's not housing. I mean, my son's dorm room is smaller than these are, and he doesn't have his own bathroom. He has to go down the hall to use the bathroom. And believe me, they charge for it. It's housing. So, I think that there is no reason why we can't sort of stretch our definition of housing a little further and have this be a place where people can stay indefinitely.
We've had a few more questions in the chat, and hopefully we can get to some of that. But before we do, there's one question that I really wanted to make sure that I asked, and that is to both of you guys. And that question is, how can people help?
Well, I'll jump in. First and foremost, we are still trying to raise the gap. We've committed to the county that we'd raise 600,000, and as Aaron mentioned, we're at about 250. So philanthropy is still super important. We are working towards an impact investment model. Future projects, I hope we'll be coming on here and talking to you about an investment model, but particularly for our first project or two, when it's not that developed yet, we need to rely on philanthropy. The second way is, quite frankly, helping make sure that we've got public support. Anything that happens around homelessness, there's backlash, there's not in my backyard. We've been thrilled to see that generally this has been positively accepted, but we need a wave of positive energy from folks like yourselves to be really supportive of this. A third way, as Aaron mentioned, is volunteers. We are going to be doing a pretty heavy lift, literally and figuratively, on the site starting November. It's probably spilling into December, where we're going to need able-bodied folks to come help assemble these units, help with the beautification of the site. We're going to do planter boxes in front of everybody's doors, and then ongoing partnership with the site. We love to have a site committee for the projects that we've done up here, where there are folks that are making sure the staff feel appreciated, bringing pizza once a month, making sure that there are donations of clothing and all those things. And so just continuing to be a positive community support for the operations there is really helpful. Aaron?
Well said. If you think there's opportunities, especially down the road, to be more imaginative and more innovative in terms of using public land, or by bringing in modular factory housing to address some of the systemic problems we have in housing, then this project and showing how it can work becomes critical. And that's why I'm just kind of so focused on kind of making sure this happens. So I would just, any way you want to help, any kind of introductions, we're open for it. And it's, this is not, Elizabeth, Matt, and I are volunteering. I mean, we're really passionate. We think this is a really big idea that could be scaled. This isn't like our idea. If you want to be part of Dignity Moves, you know, or you want to
Absolutely.
join our team, we'd love to have you, because we think this works everywhere in California and in places outside of California as well. And that if we're right, and we believe we're right, we're going to be busy for a while. So there's
And,
lots of opportunities besides donations and, you know, introductions.
and suggestions of vacant parking lots. We need vacant parking lots.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I've included the website here in the chat room. Elizabeth put her email in there as well. So, you know, if it's donations that people want to make or they want to learn more about it, all the information is there. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us. But there have been numerous people that have reached out with things like, David, you put in the chat some software, some available software. I haven't clicked the links on yet, of course, but we'll follow up with you on that. But we've had so many people come up and offer things, you know, not something exactly like this, but something interesting that we hadn't thought of. You know, we had a real estate agent offer their staging services for the furniture. You know, we've just had, you know, artists offer their time to do paintings and murals. You know, like we've said, we've had many people offer to put furniture together and things like this, or build planter box. I mean, we're basically, every time somebody comes to us with an idea, interestingly, we can actually take advantage of that and build that into the project. And so if anyone on the call is thinking about that and not sure, you know, if what they're thinking of is works or not, it probably does, and we'd recommend you reach out. I think we are getting close to the end on time. And Elizabeth, I think you muted yourself, but I did want to maybe ask you, Stephen, if you could unmute Elizabeth.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
I muted briefly because the dog was going and then I couldn't unmute.
We appreciate that. I really want to just one last question, maybe, and if somebody puts one in the chat, I'll see if I can get to it as well. But one last question, I think I'd like to highlight the role of the county in this process. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. The county has been an amazing partner, really. They really do, as I mentioned earlier, I think more than any of we've talked to a lot of government agencies over the last year. And I think Santa Barbara County really understands the importance of investing in this space. My understanding is that the supervisors are all challenging each other to find at least one site for bridge housing in their district. So I think there's going to be quite a few more of these projects. I do know also we're having a lot of good conversations with the county now about home key projects that would be this sort of modular, temporary, or permanent version. And they've been amazing partners. But obviously financially, you know, we're splitting the cost with them. They're paying for all of Good Samaritan's expenses. So it's really been truly a private partnership. I've been really, really pleased.
Yeah, and that's been consistent between North and South County. I just want to point out it's been consistent positivity and positive engagement, which I was very, very happy to see through this process. So I think with that, any parting thoughts, Aaron, you want to start? Any parting thoughts that you want to leave everybody with?
I think my parting thoughts, thank you everyone for joining. It's so cool to see other people who are interested in this topic and solutions solving kind of the crisis that we're in right now. And all I will say is, yeah, I'm so excited that when this is done in the speed at which it is finished, it is really going to surprise people, and it's going to be so exciting to be a part of it, to show how fast we can move. And we know from the service providers that they have people ready, and it's just gonna, I feel very lucky that I'm a part of this. This is one of the most meaningful things I've ever worked on.
Well, what he said. I've loved this. This has been quite a passion project, and I've just been really thrilled that Santa Barbara really raised their hand first, and we're excited to do a first project with us as a young new organization. Somebody's got to believe in you, and so we've been really thrilled, and largely from support like from this group that you guys have believed in us and been supportive is what's enabled us to make this happen. So thank you all.
Well, thank you so much. I think everyone can join me in appreciation for Elizabeth and Aaron and the work that they're doing. Thank you, and thank you for dedicating your time to this conversation for the Sustainable Change Alliance.
And you as well, Matt.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm giving a clap to Matt. It is absolutely amazing. Matt's acting like, oh, I'm not really. Matt is super involved and is like working really hard. Thank you for moderating, but
yes.
like Matt deserves more praise than I do. Like, his work is amazing. So
inside job.
Kudos to you, Matt.
All right, thanks, Stephen. I think we'll end the conversation.
Fantastic.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.